Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. Look, these guys are awesome. They have been supporting us all season long, and we are so incredibly thankful for their partnership. An awesome brewery over on the east side of Cincinnati, the Columbia Tusculum neighborhood. Find them over on Eastern Avenue, 4003 Eastern Avenue. The tap room there is just perfect for an FCC away day, a nice casual drink. They've always got food available with a rotating cast of food trucks. Always a good time. So thankful for Streetside for sponsoring us. Now, I do want to say, coming up this weekend, a couple of events you're going to want to keep an eye on. The FA Cup final watch party on May 25th. That is kicking off at 10 a.m. So you can check that out. Also, May 26th at 9 a.m., a Formula One watch party. So if you have not been out to watch an FCC match, that's fine, especially the home games. Totally understand you may be actually attending the events, but they've got some pretty cool watch parties as well available. Again, this weekend, the 25th, 26th FA Cup and Formula One. So just again, a huge thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. And on this midweek episode of the Postcast, we have a fun one for you in part one. Maybe a little overdue, but we talk about the MLSPA salary release. This is where the Players Union for MLS releases all of the salary numbers. You are going to love the conversation about Yuya Kubo's salary. That's a fun contract. If you thought the shenanigans were done with the options, you were wrong. In part two, we have a lovely conversation with FC Cincinnati staff writer Carter Chapley. Carter is covering this team so good for FC Cincinnati fans, writing on the club's website, does some really good player profiles, is talking to these guys. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation because I really enjoyed that conversation. We wrap it up in part three with a preview of the FC Cincinnati versus Victor Rivas match, and that's going to be your postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I've got two gentlemen here that are so excited to see the winning streak continue. Look, I don't believe in jinxes or coincidences. It keeps on keeping on. Chief, Grayson are here. Chief, midweek, how are we feeling?
Feeling good. Vibes are immaculate right now. 6 wins in a row. And you got. Look, I understand you don't believe in jinxes. I believe in jinxes. I am a profoundly superstitious individual.
It's your favorite Pokemon. I get it.
Yeah, no, I was raised by I was raised into a family where my grandfather used to say, expect the worst, and if the best happens, you'll be pleasantly surprised. That's the level of Irish Catholic I grew up in. So the vibes are high, but I'm going to be honest. I don't love seeing Taylor Twellman cutting videos openly speculating, are we going to win the Shield for a second straight time in a row? It's too early for that. We're way too early. We're not focused on that. We're focused. It is a season. It is a year of 1-game seasons, and we have a 1-game season for all the marbles against Toronto this weekend. Just keep it going 1 week at a time. But within those 1 weeks, we're having a little fun right now.
Yeah. Grayson, midweek, this is always a good time to focus on what's truly important in our lives. Detroit City losing to Indy 11. Where does that rank for you for achievements for FC Cincinnati this week?
I'm just hearing about this now. Wow, I didn't know that.
It's the first I'm hearing of this.
Yeah, I'd put, as far as achievements for FC Cincinnati, I would put that up there with I don't know, beating Detroit City in the Open Cup.
Yeah. It's right up there.
But if there is anyone listening that's a Detroit City fan right now, I will say this, though. You may have lost to Indy 11 on the field, but off the field, you will definitely beat Indy 11 to MLS.
So that's interesting that you bring up potential of a Detroit City fan listening, because like I'm aware there are some folks out there that are like, oh, this is my USL team and this is my MLS team,
right?
And like I missed the I missed the pod last weekend because I was in the Twin Cities, and I was at a work function. I was at my buddy's office and meeting some of his coworkers because they were doing like a barbecue thing. And a guy was like, oh, Cincinnati, we just decided that they're going to be our Eastern Conference team, and we're big like Loons fans.
Whoa! And
he was like, would you like to adopt Minnesota as the Western Conference team? And like it was just like a violent urge just like started like welling up from my stomach, because like I'm like, this is like a normal person and I cannot reveal how much of a sicko I am. Because like the idea of like having like a Western Conference team makes me like spasm. Like I'm just here just like shaking like the guy in Confederacy of Dunces every time he gets into like a weird like social situation.
What you should have done in that moment was say, I'm already a Minnesota United fan, and I listen to a podcast called The Looney Bin. Can I play it for you?
Oh man, one of the more disturbing discoveries was to find that somebody in the Minnesota United orbit did indeed start a podcast this year called The Looney Bin, covering Minnesota United. Absolutely insane.
I'm still mad. So I do realize sometimes we do go a little too inside. For those of you just joining us,
yes,
there was this older podcast, Knifey Lion Radio. You may know Jonah, who was our guest last week, ran that. They did an entire episode after we lost to Minnesota United 7-1, where it was just the three people that were on that podcast doing the worst Minnesota accent you can possibly imagine. And pretending that they were a podcast called The Looney Bin. And
they just switched sides. We got beat so bad. They just switched sides for an episode.
The internet never forgets. It's up there somewhere. If you can find it, it is a time capsule of awful. That is one of the best audio experiences you will have online listening to this.
I will dig up a link and put it in the show notes if I remember at the end of this.
I'll find it while we're recording, because I know that you will forget to do this, and it will be yet another thing where people are like, "I looked for the link and it's not there. What happened?"
Don't worry about it. You don't need
it. Like all of Grayson's writing that we didn't put a link to the one time.
I had it up in tabs as well. That was rough. That's a bad look on my part.
Tough scenes.
Oh, man, a Western Conference team. I mean, in fairness, now I'm not saying this is a good idea to have a Western Conference team. That is something a normal
person might do.
Yes.
Yes.
And the league is so big and the crossover play isn't as intense.
Hold on.
Got it?
I'm scrolling through Knifey Lion Radio right now, and I'm just looking for the episode. And as I'm reading it, episode 132, 9/6/21, the title is Lame Duck. The only description of the episode is Kevin Wallace of the Post joins me to complain about this team.
Good. That's all you needed.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, like I understand a normal person thinking like, oh yeah, it makes sense to get like a Western Conference team and an Eastern Conference team. And I, have worms eating my brainstem, so I do this podcast.
If you did indeed adopt Minnesota United, this week was very exciting with the weird grainy video of Emmanuel Reynoso showing up online
with bags of cash and a guy with a gun.
Literally, just like his homeboy with a gun, stacks of cash. Man,
could you imagine certain fans of this team if there was a picture of a player like hanging out in South America with like literal bags of paper cash, and he's standing next to a guy who's pointing a gun at the camera. People freaked out because Bupenza was at a bar at 2 a.m. on not a school night.
On his weekend. Damn.
Like, it's just, it's
They
so
wouldn't survive.
funny. It's so funny. It's just like, it must be so wonderful to like
live that life.
be birthed 2 weeks ago as a 55-year-old man. like not a single experience or thought in your life.
Right.
It's incredible.
There is no context to anything. You're just horrified by what you see.
Just more void. No light.
Man, I'm trying to think of some good moments in soccer. Like Mario Balotelli set his house on fire, setting fireworks off in his bathroom, which is pretty good. Like it's pretty high up there.
Didn't DeMarcus Beasley's house get caught on fire or set on fire in Mexico?
That sounds familiar. Someone for the U.S. men's national team had that happen. I'm surprised Landon Donovan, wherever he was staying at in Leon, didn't get attacked. I think at that point, it was so funny that he was even playing in Mexico that I think they were willing to go along with the joke. But, man.
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. On February 1st, 2010, Beasley's car was firebombed in front of his house in Glasgow.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so
who among us hasn't had that happen to us?
Yeah, who's amongst us? It's insured.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, who cares? And if you still owe on it, it's like the bank's car anyway, so.
I would love to go back in time and just cut DeMarcus Beasley from the national team in 2010.
Wow, okay. Jurgen Cheezel.
I think he played in he went to the 2014 World Cup.
Yeah, he was very good in the 2014 World Cup. Oh, man. Well, we are midweek, so if there is anything to talk about, it is something that happened last week, which is the MLSPA salary information came out. We finally have some directionally accurate information to talk about when it comes to player compensation with this. This is always exciting. I'm very happy that the union does this. You know that MLS will absolutely not put anything up transparency wise. Although I guess I should say this year, they did clarify everybody's official roster designations, and everybody gave them a round of applause for finally telling us who the DPs were.
Right, doing the bare minimum.
I was like, oh, great. They're doing, like, when I first heard they were doing this great reveal, I thought, oh my God, we're finally going to get GAM and TAM numbers. No, they're just telling us which ones actually counted as U22 players.
MLS, we make this league hard to follow. Why?
Yeah.
Because fuck you. That's why.
Exactly. So we do have the salary information. Now, I think there's a couple of caveats I want to point out with this before we get into the conversation. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people miss. This is different than the player's budget charge. So when you're looking at the salary cap, that includes transfer fees, and it does not necessarily, it doesn't exclude transfer fees. So when you're looking at just the salaries, that doesn't include transfer fees at all, but a player's salary cap hit is based on that. This also does not tell us exactly how much a player is being paid by FC Cincinnati sometimes. So in the case of like Luca Orishano, it is absolutely what FC Cincinnati is paying, but he is making more money this year. But with other players, like DeAndre Yedlin, his salary is split across a couple of teams because of his trade, right? And then there is the base salary versus guaranteed compensation, which always gets a little weird. I'm sure Grayson will clarify anything I do accidentally say, but in general, the base salary guaranteed compensation disparity can include things like bonuses that they are possible to hit. I know that there's in some ways options or extend sanctions that can play into affecting that number. So these are accurate, but they're also not perfect, especially when you're trying to understand them from a salary cap perspective.
Yeah, so this is straight from the union's website. Okay. It says, the annual average guaranteed compensation number includes a player's base salary and all signing and guaranteed bonuses annualized over the terms of the player's contract, including option years.
Okay.
And the guaranteed compensation figure also includes any marketing bonus and any agent's fees, both annualized over the term of the contract. And again, that includes option years, and which is different from the player's salary budget charge.
Yep.
Because the player's salary budget charge would include things like the player's annualized transfer fee, but it does not include the option years. So if you have like a $3 million transfer fee and you have 2 guaranteed years and 2 option years, that transfer fee hits at 1.5 million in those first 2 years. It doesn't get spread over the
4 years.
4 years. So it's with those guaranteed comp numbers, I think they're interesting, but the thing you got to remember is like, and again, this is just like all we can go off of is what like the MLSPA and MLS tell us. So there's probably like a million different things that go into how these numbers are calculated, right? But like I've always looked at the base salary numbers.
Yeah.
Because the guaranteed comp includes option years, and like you've no idea if some players got some like massive option that the team has just said, yeah, we'll put this option here, but we're probably just going to renegotiate some type of extension if he works out. And then again, transfer fees are not reflected on this release at all, and MLS teams generally don't publish their transfer fees. You can usually find reporting on it when a player comes in from abroad. You can usually find reporting on it in like international media from whatever country they're on. And then maybe like Tom Bogert or Pat or somebody will also get that number from somewhere. But MLS virtually never like confirms a hard transfer fee number.
They rarely report an outgoing transfer fee number even.
Yeah, I mean, they do sometimes say like, oh, this is like a record, right?
Right.
And they'll list like, I'm not even sure the league's website ever lists like the top 10 highest outgoing transfers. I think they'll say like somebody's a record and they'll let the Athletic, list it.
Fill in the blanks. Numbers. Yeah. This is FC Cincinnati's highest transfer fee ever. Okay, what is it? Go look on this website if you want.
And then when Chelsea had to pay New England another $2 million for Petrovic.
Yeah.
I think that was just like Tom Bogert reported that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there was I'm not aware of any official word from the league on that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with all this, there's the truth, then there's the truth with quotation marks, and then there's the bag of money that just exchanges hands from time to time. So whenever you talk about salaries in MLS, it's interesting, but you always have to take it with the idea that no matter what numbers you're looking at, you're not getting the full picture on anything. And when you see a number that's being reported as a salary, you get fired up about it. And like, we fall into this trap too, where like we look at these numbers and we're like, how in God's name is Yuya Kubo, who we heard was negotiating for a pay, like they were trying to bring back at a lower number, somehow still making close to max TAM? Like he's making 1.3 million. Max TAM is what, like 1.6, I think, somewhere in that range.
It's like 1.68.
Right. Like, how is that possible? How is that? It works. Like that's you have to view MLS roster and MLS salary as sort of a binary. Does this work or not? And this works.
Wait, have you guys looked at this? Did Yuya Kubo's number come down since this was first published?
I thought it was 1.5. I thought it was 1.5. It's 1.36 on.
I don't remember ever seeing it 1.5.
I'm now seeing it at $650,000.
That did come down.
Okay.
So the website.
Yeah.
So peek behind the curtain. I'm looking at a spreadsheet that somebody kindly made for me.
I'm
the
using
original
the
salary
website
release.
over here.
Kevin, I think you got to break some news on this.
Wait, hold on. So
His salary's cut in half.
No, on the MLS. So I'm on the MLSplayers.org, and it says, MLSplayers.org. Yuya Kubo, $650,000, $721,000 in total guaranteed compensation.
That's what it says now.
If you click download a PDF version, the PDF version still has Yuya Kubo at 1.36 million.
Because the PDF it probably was not updated.
No, it's the April 25th, 2024.
Yeah, it's May 22, 2024 now.
So what, like he got a 50% pay cut in 30 days?
Somebody must have put the wrong number in, because it's like...
Wow. Okay. Because I was ready to talk about this.
This question needs to be asked.
Yeah, I was ready to talk about this because it really felt like, and
Guys,
I don't have 2023's website up.
Make sure you make a note to ask Carter about this when we interview him in the next segment.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'll make sure to ask Carter about that when we interview him.
We did not tape the interview
after recording this. God damn.
Breaking news, Yuya Kubo, 50% pay cut, despite being one of the leading goal scorers of the FC. Kevin, do you think that there's a problem in the locker room with Yuya being asked to take such a big pay cut over the last 30 days?
You know, it makes you wonder, the man wins the starting job and he gets his pay cut in half. How long can this team stick together?
They clearly updated this quietly over the last couple weeks.
Now I'm curious what else is different. I don't have the other number in front of me, but
right,
that one jumps out.
You guys keep talking. I'm going to see if I can compare this and see if... I wish I had two monitors right now.
Okay, so the original... Oh, shit. Maybe somebody else got updated. But yeah, the original number was $1.364 million base salary, 1.479750. I don't know. I did the point if I just read all the number out. Guaranteed comp for Kubo.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about Aaron Bupenza's salary for reference. So, yeah, it would. And again, I don't have 2023's number up here, but it did feel like Yuya Kubo got a pay raise from that first number. So, yeah,
wow.
Pretty wild. So, yeah, okay. So Yuya Kubo is now,
who
according
knows?
To this number, well, yeah. First off,
check back in a week, and he might be making $10. he might be making minimum wage if he keeps going long enough.
This is a fun salary where he actually gets, which is I think illegal in MLS, or not allowed, I should say. He gets paid less as the season goes on.
So Kubo for base salary in 2023.
Yeah.
Was just over $1 million.
Okay.
And his guaranteed comp was $1.2 million.
So he did not.
What was originally reported for Kubo's salary was $1.3 million base salary and almost $1.5 million in guaranteed comp. And now the MLS Players Association website has quietly been updated to basically reduce those numbers by a little bit more than half.
Yeah, he took, give or take, a 50% haircut here.
Okay, we were going to talk, I think segment one was going to be, how did Yuya Kubo get so much money and why was he still worth it? Now he's really worth it. 650,000 clams for a starting striker in this league? Hell yeah.
Might be the best. What was going to be a funny quirk of, wow, they paid him way too much money, but he turned out to be worth it. Now they're getting a hell of a bargain with a starting right back, a starting midfielder, and a starting striker.
He's one starter and four backups.
Right. For the price of,
for less than maximum salary budget charge.
I mean, if you had to play the game right now of, a team of 11, insert players here, Yuya Kubo's got to be high on that list of, I think that a team of 11 Kubos would beat a team of 11 any other player in this league.
What would be the next best player?
I mean, you're sacrificing some shit.
Obi. I bet Obi would be a solid contender in all other positions.
I don't know that Obi can score goals. He did that one. He scored that one that won the game against Red Bulls in Red Bull last year.
Proven game winner.
Forsberg would be a good.
Oh, you're just going anywhere in MLS. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, anywhere in MLS. Yeah.
Yeah. Anywhere in MLS.
I mean, yeah. Okay. If it's Yuya Kubo versus Champions League starter international Emil Forsberg, sure, that's a good comp.
I still think Kubo
would you be able
him.
to take the ball off of 11 Messis?
Would
you
11
have to
Messi
get
stay
the ball
healthy
at some point?
11 Messies would be good, except for you'd have 10. You'd have 10 pouting Messies because the other one has the ball.
Yeah, like you have one Messi with the ball and 10 guys walking.
Right.
And Messi ain't diving to make a stop as a goalkeeper either.
No.
Kubo will sell his body out as a goalkeeper. I have faith that'd happen.
That's true. EAFC could solve this for us if we were any better at that. You know what else jumped out to me on this one is Luca Orishano making base salary league minimum, which is incredible. So again, I mentioned this in sort of the beginning caveats. Presumably, his loaning club is paying him the vast majority of his salary. FCC, Chris Albright, I'm again assuming shrewd negotiations said we'll pick up 89,716 of his dollars for this season if you pick up the rest, and he comes in at league minimum, which is pretty dang on good. Although I would assume, again, looking at that guaranteed compensation being exactly the same, that this is entirely tied to his loan, and that should there be a purchase option triggered, his salary would jump up to $500,000-$600,000, maybe even DP level salary. So it's a hell of a bargain for this year and this year alone. So well done. This is your Yerson Mosquera equivalent.
I was just going to say, like, this is the Albright MO now, is that how do you build a championship worthy roster in MLS? You got to find one guy that's somebody else is paying the bill for. And so you had a guy who was a La Liga level starter last year on the book for minimum budget charge because the Wolverhampton was paying most of his money. This year, you get your Alvaro Barreal replacement on league minimum because his home club's paying the transfer fee. Guy's a wizard at this, man.
Yeah.
Like that's the bottom line when you look at these salaries is there's really only one number at this point where you're like, come on, really? And that's Sergio Santos. And you say that, but the man just scored a goal in the last game. And he seems like the ultimate vibes guy to the point where it's like, can you put a price on a dude that's just a really good hang and keeps the locker room loose? I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, until Kevin Kelsey showed up, he's the only healthy striker we have on the roster right now.
Right? And like, do I want to be fired up about Santos? Yeah, but shit, you're getting Orishano for league minimum. You can afford to have a vibes guy making $800K.
Yeah, if Chris Albright's not concerned about his number, I'm not concerned about his number. Another guy who. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the idea of Chris Albright just walking around stressed about Santos's number. Fuck, I fucked up. Oh God, they're going to know.
Like every time he talks to him, he's like, God, I screwed this up. I got alpha in this negotiation. I feel bad.
I know he's got a transfer fee, but Buka on 450, that's pretty similar to what Junior Moreno was on salary wise.
Yep.
So you got to feel pretty good about that since
I
think he's got more tools in his kit than the Moreno plus. He's younger,
He's younger.
all that upside.
Yep.
I'll say this, that at the level Buka is playing right now, I don't miss Junior Moreno. Like the first couple of matches as he was integrating, it was pretty obvious that the team missed what Junior had, but they got younger and they got more dynamic on the same budget charge. Sign me up every time.
I'd feel better if it was 450,000 Czech crowns, but
well,
which I assume is $20.
Yedlin at 850. I feel like that's like, Santiarius kind of money. I feel fine about that.
This salary dump gave us some insight to Lucho and Roman's pay raises. Mm-hmm. They had new deals announced last year. Lucho, my man, pushing $3 million for that base salary.
I think he's now top 10 in MLS in terms of total salary. So
well earned.
He's the league MVP. But what's kind of nice is, it's nice to see this city pay someone what they're worth. Yeah. Doesn't always happen. Take it for granted sometimes. But yeah, they're paying the man like a star. Other number that jumps out at me on this one, and I know that this isn't really his number because there's apparently some extra money that you get because of the way the contract for him was structured. But man, Nick Hagglund at $90,000 is just a value, man. 89,000 for the level of play that he offers, and again, being by all accounts a total vibes guy for this team. That's good business, and that deal to bring him here from Toronto originally. Boy, has that deal turned out from something that we got absolutely annihilated for. And you'd be hard pressed not to say that the Nick Hagglund deal to FC Cincinnati hasn't been an overwhelming, resounding success.
Yeah.
And to some other, you got something to say about Hagglund?
No, the only thing I was going to say is if you go back and look at the 2023 number, it's higher. And I don't necessarily think Hagglund took a pay cut from year to year. I think this is a quirk in, as Chief was saying, he gets some bonus money for being a club ambassador. And I think last year they were counting that, and this year they're not for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't think he took a pay cut from last year to this year. And if he did, goddamn. Way to go, Albright. Sucks for you, Hagglund. I don't know what's going on, man.
So two things I want to point out. One is the supplemental roster. These are guys who are on essentially like minimum contracts, and there's some kind of roster rules about who can fill whatever spot. But the net of it is nobody on the supplemental roster counts against your salary budget.
Right.
So some of the players who are on the supplemental roster, which means that they are like not counting against the cap at all, are Yamil Assad, Brett Halsey, Kip Keller, Ian Murphy, Malik Pinto, Dado Valenzuela.
So guys are getting significant minutes out of on the supplemental roster.
These are all contributors to the team. Like that's an incredible amount of value.
You got two guys on there that
count against your roster budget.
The de facto starters right now. Dado Valenzuela and Ian Murphy.
Ian Murphy's a real. Ian Murphy's an actual starter.
Yeah. But that was the bit. Wasn't that was the bitch forever? Was that other teams would roll out guys on supplemental roster contracts and get valuable minutes, starter minutes out of players like that, where the guys that used to be on the supplemental roster for this team were just absolute garbage, just the dregs of people that if they weren't on this roster, they would be struggling for minutes in USL. And now you have legitimate bona fide MLS talent. Assad gives minutes. Murphy, locked on starter. Dado probably could be a starter on this team, just roster situation or injury situation dependent. That's unbelievable.
Malik Pinto's our fourth midfielder right now. Like he is our midfield depth, as it were. And I will say this is where salary cap leagues in general and MLS in the world of soccer specifically bites you in the ass, because inevitably can't keep these guys on $70,000 a year salaries that don't count against the cap. Like, Ian Murphy is worth $400,000 a year in this league, and you can't just pay him that and keep everything else the same. That's got to come out of somebody else's budget total, or maybe not even a specific person, but a roster group, a position group needs to lose that much money to make a spot for him. And that's where you get those tough calls of Barrial has to go, Vasquez has to go, Mosquera can't stick around. That's what makes this tough. And I mean, again, like we do it enough here, but that's a hat tip to Chris Albright being able to move year to year to year now, making these tough calls, you know, picking and choosing who you keep and who you cut to go find, you know, opportunity elsewhere.
There's 26 players listed on this roster, 18 senior roster players and 8 supplemental roster players. I think all but 2 of them have appeared in MLS. And all but 3 of them have played fairly significant roles. Because so there's Isaiah Foster. I don't think he's appeared in MLS yet.
No.
London Agato, I don't think has appeared in MLS.
No.
Steven Jimenez has a couple of minutes in MLS this year.
Maybe 1 appearance?
I think he has 1 appearance. But everybody else on the roster, like, has had to play a significant role in at least 1 game.
Dado Valenzuela is like,
this is a real deep roster. And you know what? They have 2 senior roster spots at least. You know?
Yeah. I was going to ask you that. So looking at this and where the roster is, what flexibility do they have this summer to just sign a player? Are we maxed out? Do they have a spot?
Nobody can tell you if they're maxed out as far as like roster budget.
Yeah.
But they could sign 2 U22 players as far as like roster designations go.
Okay.
Because the rule this summer is going to allow you to have 3 DPs and 3 U22s.
Right.
So they could go sign like 2 players, 2 more Kevin Kelseys, this summer. And then depending on whatever happens with Bupenzem, maybe you have another DP you can bring in, or you can sign a 4th U22 and get that GAM bonus for not using all your 3 DP spots. I mean, unless they're like, and again, like, we all do our best, and I think, Ken over at CST really does like, he does a job, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But like nobody can really tell you like how much roster budget space they have, except for like Chris Albright or Kyle McCarthy.
And
they don't even know. I
bet they got to check in with the league. Just be like, wait, how much we got?
So like, they theoretically have 2 senior spots and 2 U22 spots, which are low budget hit spots that are available to use. Whether they actually have like $200,000 left in the budget somewhere to sign a U22, who knows? I mean, Tom Bogert is out there saying that he expects FC Cincinnati to have a big summer. I like to hear that, and I like to believe it, so I'm going to believe it.
Because this league operates on rule of cool. And if there's somebody that wants to play for this team and they can make a signing happen with, the player rep and everything, this league's going to find a way to make big signings happen.
If we look like a genuine threat to Miami, do they not let us sign Romelu Lukaku this summer? Do they?
What's a better story? What's a better story if you're Don Garber in MLS? Is it that Messi comes in and runs your league, or that Messi is humbled in MLS
by the mighty FC?
Yeah.
If it was not FC Cincinnati, yes. If it's Colorado or New England Revolution, sure. One of the good old boys, yeah. You want to give Jeff Birding the satisfaction of beating Messi? No way.
I do. I'm happy to give it to him. So another thing that I found funny on the roster compliance report the team put out, or the roster, whatever it was, was they listed Kevin Kelsey as having options for 2028 and 2029.
Why not?
And they listed Luca Orshano as having options for 2026 and 2027. I assume that means that whatever contract they would sign if the loan turns into a purchase is like like for Kelsey, like a 3-year deal with options for 28 and 29. But it'd be very funny if like Kevin Kelsey's loan expired and they had the option to just bring him back in 3 years for 28 and 29.
We're banking on what you'll be in 3 years. You go back to Ukraine, do well in the Bundesliga, go on to star for a big club in the next 3 years, and then we get you right back here.
You get 3 years at Hoffenheim, and then you have to come back to Cincinnati.
It's a tough contract. It's like I know Purdue was doing this. A few other colleges were doing this, where you could take a large cash stipend to go to college, but you had to agree to a 10% wage garnish for the rest of your career back to your university. It's pretty great. That's what I'm imagining Kelsey did. He's investing in himself here.
I love this because it simultaneously tells you everything and tells you nothing.
Yeah.
Like it's fascinating information that is ultimately useless in making any sort of determination about anything.
It's the perfect fodder for this podcast.
Absolutely true.
It gives you a lot of things to say. None of it matters.
No.
Also, for whatever it's worth, not that they would lie, but certainly the players union has every incentive to exaggerate or pump up the numbers as high as possible so that when their fellow members go into pay negotiations, they can pull up this website and see, well, look at this. Corey Baird's making $644,000. Certainly I should be making more. So
from this list, gentlemen, what's your favorite contract?
Alvaro Barreal for just a hair under DP money. And I don't know. Maybe he comes back next year. Very weird. That's my favorite contract.
I mean, coming into it, I would have said Luca Orshano on a senior minimum deal.
Insane.
But I do like that Yuya Kubo is on a contract like out of Harry Potter or something, where the number just like kind of like is constantly like changing and flipping and moving, and who knows what it may be at any given moment.
What's the Doctor Who creature that chases you when you're not looking at it?
Oh, the weeping angel.
Yes.
Like when you're not looking at Yuya Kubo's contract, it shifts.
Yes.
Don't blink, whatever you do.
Chief, what's yours? What's
my
your
favorite
highlight?
contract on here? I don't know. There's so many options to choose from. I like. I'm gonna go with the aforementioned Nick Hagglund, $89,716. $890. Yeah, sure. For 10 years, $89,716 for what we've referred to as a load-bearing piece of the FC Cincinnati structure.
That's a nice Cincinnatian level of salary.
Do you think that if you went to Nick Hagglund and said, we're going to ask if you can give back $203 so that your number can end in 513, that he would be cool with that?
I'd be tempted for sure. I was wondering, what was the negotiation like to take the $40,000 off of Lucho's contract to keep him under $3 million? Like, what's the Jedi mind trick here? What's the voodoo accounting that he's trying to dodge? Is there some sort of like Argentinian tax
we just don't know about?
It's trying to duck under. I was thinking too, you could. I haven't done this perfectly, just doing this on the fly. You could build a hell of a starting 11 making $250,000 or less. Like this team of making $250,000 or less, you get Alec Cannon goal, so you got that, or even Evan Loro in there. Alvis Powell, you've got Yamil Assad. Of course, you'd have Luca Orshano in there. Kip Keller is starting. Nick Hagglund is starting. Ian Murphy is starting. Like, you could build an MLS playoff team.
Hold on. Would this team of sub $250,000 players beat the 2019 FC Cincinnati team with its full complement of players.
Yes.
Which team does Alvis Powell play for? That might determine.
He plays both. He's like all-time QB in like the old backyard football games he used to play.
Who's starting up top for the sub $250,000 team?
Dotto and
Kevin Kelsey. He's like a $150,000 budget hit.
Yeah.
Is he? I don't see his number, but yes, I'll assume that's the case.
His contract was too late to make this release.
No, the answer who's starting up top is Yuya Kubo. Because if you need him to be making under 250 for this, he'll be making under 250 when you look again.
That's a good point. Oh, man.
Yuya Kubo works at the restaurant at the end of the world.
The most interesting man in the universe.
Oh, God. Oh, there you go. I don't know if that's informative, but it is something.
It is something.
I mean, here's the deal, folks. When you pull this up after you listen to the podcast, all these numbers may have changed. And if these numbers are different, it's not our fault. It's the players' union's fault.
I can't believe I found that. Heaven forbid we had all been working off of the same spreadsheet. We would have just completely missed it.
The PDF is still showing the old number. Like,
that's awesome.
Because nobody updated the PDF, probably.
It says as of, yeah, you're probably right about that.
But
April 30.
In fairness,
well, hold on. The PDF says
no. April 24. Sorry, I'm looking at the 23 now. April 25.
So the PDF says as the report as of April 25th, 2023. But it has Corey Baird on our. It has Corey Baird on our roster.
No, it says April 25th, 2024.
In the fucking link at the top, April 25th, 2023 on the PDF.
Well, that's not what I see. I see April 25th, 2024.
It does. It says 2024 salary report as of April 25th, 2023 in the URL of the PDF.
Oh, in the URL.
In the
URL. All right. That's so good. Also, they released this last week, so I don't know why they say April 25th. So that's good. I love
this league so much. Kevin, get us out of here to segment 2 that I'm not a part of until the very end.
Yes, that's true. So part 2, we have FC Cincinnati staff writer Carter Chapley joining us. Fantastic conversation with him. And peek behind the curtain. We recorded it first. Chief wasn't able to join us until he slipped in, I think, literally at the last question, which is why also Chief's audio is a little different there. And then, after that, we'll do part 3, which we are about to record. Very fun, the editing here, which will preview the Toronto match coming up this weekend. So enjoy the conversation with Carter. There's a preview after that. And before we head on over to part 2, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts. These guys, let me tell you about these guys. Do you know about these guys? Let me tell you about these guys. Cincy Shirts has been around from the beginning. If you ask me, and nobody did, Cincy Shirts was instrumental in FC Cincinnati becoming very, very popular and eventually leading to their MLS bid, which is why I am so excited that the Post and the Postcast are able to partner with them. Look, here's the deal. If you use the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, when purchasing something from them, you get 10% off, and we get a little bit of money back our way, huh? It also lets them know that you heard about them through our show. And even if that's not true, it makes me feel good, and it makes them feel good. So use that code. Look, they just released some new Hawaiian-style shirts. I don't know if they're actually Hawaiian-style, but some new floral prints for FCC, some button-ups. Get on this. The supplies do not last. However, they do have 3 in-store locations, including a new one over in Loveland, where they can print most of the designs for you on a shirt. The button-ups, I don't think they can do on demand, but they can print those designs on demand in a shirt on any size that you'd like. I've definitely used that service. It is awesome. So again, the promo code, ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, knock a couple bucks off of your next order. It works on non-FCC gear too, all right? Get yourself an Ellie De La Cruz shirt or something like that. You're gonna look good in it. You're gonna have a good time. You're gonna save a couple of bucks. doing this. So Cincy Shirts, again, cincyshirts.com, link in the description, the code, the post Cincy, all one word, all caps. A huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this and many other episodes of the Postcast. Joining us here in part 2, so happy to have him back on the pod, FC Cincinnati's resident staff writer, one Carter Chapley. Carter, how you doing this evening, my man?
I'm doing great. I heard I got baptized on the podcast last week, earlier in the week, burnt Grippo's chips or something like that. So when I found out about that, I was stoked to come back. So I had to make an appearance.
It is terrifying that folks at the club listen to the podcast. So
no, well, some do, but like oftentimes like that kind of thing will pop up, and then I'll get like a text from someone with the audio and be like, oh, now I have to listen. Like now I must go find out what I'm being spoken about. So
have you ever thought about telling the people at the team not to
listen?
Yeah.
Tell them knock it off.
Well, I mean, I guess how do I say this? I guess there's like listening and then there's active listening, I guess is the
fair
is the other point. No, but it's really good to be back. It's really good to come and hang out.
Oh, no. So happy to have you here. If we were any better at our jobs, I think we would have had you on, leading up to the St. Louis match, not following the St. Louis match, given your transplant roots in that city. But did you emerge from the St. Louis weekend unscathed, or are you okay here with any friendly fire from old acquaintances back over there?
No, it all worked. I think it all worked out fine. I made the intentional decision to misspell Emo's Pizza, and I think people didn't quite get the gist there, considering it's the worst pizza in the world. And I told that to a lot of St. Louis City SC staffers who came through. I let them know it's the worst pizza in the world. It's not even pizza. It's not even pizza. So like Detroit style pizza all the way. But no, I think it was fine. I have a lot of respect for that city and for that organization as a whole. I think it's filled with a lot of really good people. I worked with them for a little while. I worked in that city for a little while. I did, spoke with Tom Zimmerman, the Post-Dispatch, my old coworker there. Did some radio for I think it's a really, in terms of an organization, they're a first class organization. So, and I think that shows that the team made it a little easier on me by doing what they did, wearing the IL white armbands pregame. That kind of makes it easier to be like, hey, we're not jerks. Right. It makes it a little easier on me. But no, I like those guys a lot, especially their comms and content people. So no, I emerged just fine, and it's a lot easier when you win 3-1. That's a lot easier to come out on the other side of it.
Did you tell Matt that it would be easier if he let one in?
No. What's funny is like he was like, he's obviously very funny on Instagram the next day about it. It took big mea culpa, and Roman can laugh about it, yep. in after the game. I mean, that team that team last year was so that team last year almost directly results in that St. Louis team in 2023. That is almost directly results in FCC's center back depth getting better in 2024. So who can be upset with that?
That's a great point. It was all to FC Cincinnati's benefit.
Exactly.
You brought up the armbands pregame for the St. Louis match, which was sort of in solidarity and support of Edward Leuven, sorry, excuse me. His wife being recently diagnosed with brain cancer. I was curious, do we know where that decision came from? Was that from Pat? Was it from one of the players? Who was inspired by that?
I don't know. I don't think that's a thing that they'll ever want put out there. This is just it was a leadership decision. I found out about it and I don't know how quickly it was decided on. Pat mentioned, his support from the organization on Thursday at his match day -2. And then pregame, we were informed that it was a thing that they were going to be doing, that the equipment staff kind of took care of making sure it would get done. So it could have happened, but as quickly as that morning. I really don't know. The leadership group will make those decisions, and Pat wore the whole game, so I wouldn't be surprised if it came right from him.
Yeah. No, it was a really, really nice gesture. I was really happy to see that. I mean, we've talked plenty of smack about St. Louis and this team in particular, but some things are a little bigger than the game. Admittedly, no, that was a very nice gesture. So yeah, man, I mean, it's been a year since we've had you on. Some things have happened since then. This team went on to win a supporter shield, crashed out of the playoffs, and so far this year, I mean, you could make an argument for this being a better team than a team last year that was sniffing the points record with a couple of games remaining in the season. I guess my question is, like, how different is this team now to last year? What are we looking at right now?
I mean, the roster is obviously different. There's a lot of changes, like 6 starters. People will, either make that a big deal or they won't. I think it can't be overstated how big of a deal it is that, like, starting right at the very top, like Chris Albright goes out and makes some difficult decisions, like not bringing back some guys, bringing back other guys, like very tough decisions, knowing what he thinks he can go and bring in and the kind of player he can bring in. Like, I think of a player like Junior Moreno, who was, really good for this team, very solid in the supporter shield run, and make the choice that it's time to move on for one reason or another, like whatever the reasoning was, whether it's, the player personnel, financial, whatever the constraints that the MLS salary cap has, and they go out and get a player like Pavel Buka, who is, younger and more exciting. So, like, the thing that I think is really interesting about this roster is that it's in every place more exciting. It's younger. It's a little more high upside than like the stability that it provided. Like, I think maybe DeAndre Yedlin is the only replacement on that right wing that, like, you might be able to create a comparison between Santi Arias and DeAndre Yedlin in terms of like veteran presence while also having like clear talent. But like Alvaro Barreal, he departs the club on loan, and you bring in a Luca Oriano, who has never played that position before, but you can very clearly see like the young, exciting aspect to his game. Don Badji goes out. He's still playing. He's playing in Turkey. And, you go for, you pick up Corey Baird, who I'm sure we'll talk about him a little bit more as we go on. But then you also kind of give opportunities to a guy like Dado Valenzuela, who was on this team last year, but didn't have quite the same role and has now played his way into it. So I look up and down the roster and I just see a lot of upside, and maybe more so than last year, which is the place that maybe you talk about being better than it was last year. Though I am curious as to how that upside plays out with that youth as the year goes on is kind of the thing I guess I'm interested in.
So speaking of the upside, I mean, my the way I'm thinking about the team and where it sits at the moment, well, aside from, top of the league on a points per game basis, but it feels like, the goalie and the center backs, let's say, as good as advertised, pretty good continuity from year to year. I mean, Robinson slotting in on the right, Murphy playing on the left. Obviously, Mosquera's not around this year, but it's very similar to how they were last year. I mean,
there's
like
a certain amount of like for
top
like
unit, right?
There.
Yeah. And Obi's Obi. But when you get to the players like Yedlin, more so Luka, Buka, and then the forwards, whatever permutation of the forwards, is playing on a given night. I mean, that feels like there still is a lot of room for improvement, just like by guys on the roster getting more time together and getting more comfortable playing together. And so that's kind of an exciting thing to look at from my perspective, which is, the defensive stability, especially early in the season, kept them in games, kept the score sheet low. And, you could argue that we're starting to see the offense kind of start to reach the potential it has. And I mean, you mentioned him, Dotto, could really seize, the opportunity with the minutes he's getting. Kelsey's barely been in the team. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like that's where the team gets better, right? And that's where the back line being as good as it does gives you time to like figure that out. Because like there isn't going to be a game that you're just flat out of this year. Like I don't think there's a game that like you like, oh my God, there's just no way this offense isn't going to be able to produce enough to get over what the defense can't make up. Like, which gives you the time to figure it out. And when you start talking about that forward group, the first thing that comes to mind is like, I think when you're putting together your best, maybe not your best 11, but the optimal 11, which I think is two different. Like, I think with performance, like you could very well make the claim that like Yuya Kubo is your starting like 9 right now, or part of a starting 9 group. But like, is that where this team is best at? Is he your starter? Which I don't know. Maybe that might be the combination. But like right now, the depth of this team is really tested because all your depth is playing starting positions. And that's where the team gets really exciting is like all of a sudden, like we've gone this season where Corey Baird is in the starting forward group. Where I'll talk about it in that context, even though he's been out with a hip injury the last couple of weeks. Like it's a lot easier to go to your bench when the substitute is Dado Valenzuela or Yuya Kubo to fill into that role than it is like right now without him, where like the next guy up in the striker room is either one of like an academy player or a twos player on a short-term loan, and this is forgetting Sergio Santos, who again I think has been really, really solid the last couple of weeks, and starting to see kind of like maybe in a way that wasn't being shown off quite as well earlier this year, his role is kind of becoming more evident in terms of his late game substitution ability. So like that's where I get excited about this team is like, is it like I watched last year's team and they had like such a consistent way of playing. They were so connected that like I watched the Toronto game from last year. I mean, great memories. Can't wait to get into that. That like you could just see things like Brandon and like Santi, for example, like they knew when the other one was going to do things that this team just hasn't figured out yet. You start to see signs of it. So that team looks better when you look at them like in a game like last year's. But like you look at the pieces on this team and you go, this team has higher upside, and I'm excited for what that means when we get into like November. Like that's right. The thing that makes like if they stay like the ultimate thing is like if they stay healthy is always like the caveat there.
Yeah, but if they stay healthy, but we've also lost Bupenza, Santos, Baird, Yedlin, and this team's on a winning streak. Like
Celentano.
Maybe we drop a few more guys and we start winning 5-0. Like it seems like the more hurt this team gets, the better they're performing.
They get stronger. Every limb you cut off, 2 more grow.
The Hydra, yeah.
But I see that and go like what happened in like the Eastern Conference Final last year was the exact like byproduct of that. Was like, hey, like this team's depth. Ray Gaddis starting, Alvis Powell as a starter. Like this team's depth is top of the league, MLS quality good. Like even as a bench substitution pieces, like these guys can be starters for a really good team.
Yeah. What
happens when you have to make a sub in the 80th minute and all of a sudden the guys you would be turning to are the guys you're subbing off?
Right.
That's the difference of last year was like when you had to go to the depth, there wasn't much to go to in the same way that like this year, when you actually have your optimal 11, you can make 5 subs and feel really good about, everywhere down the roster. You're like, okay, like that guy's gonna like even a guy like Malik Pinto, who like played a lot last year, like he gets subbed in late game defensive situations and it doesn't look like the team takes a step down. And he's a 21-year-old like defensive mid who gets brought on for Obi. Like that's a pretty impressive like substitution. But if he's the guy who starts that game, you don't feel as like comfortable about who comes next.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of get into the injury stuff.
Yeah.
When you talked about like that starting, like the best 11 versus optimal 11, I thought that was an interesting way to think about it, because specifically for the reason you mentioned with Kubo, like we love seeing him. We love seeing Kubo, get his goals, right? But the way I think about it, maybe unfortunately, is that if somebody else like seized the starting striker spot, Kubo then becomes that, first choice sub at like 4 or 5 different spots on the field.
Like you can make your choices to where you utilize him in a game. Like, oh, maybe DeAndre is running out of gas. He's comfortable there. Oh, it's this time it's Pavel or Obi or even Lucho. Like you can use him in so many different places that you don't have to be like, well, he goes there. Like that's his spot. And I guess they've kind of used him in that way this year a little bit as a starter. Like, oh, when so-and-so has to come out with a sub, Alvis has to come out, we'll just swing him back there. We'll just put him there. So it's worked that way, but like, I'd imagine that's not the optimal way of a roster being built. That's up to Pat, but like, I would sense that like, perhaps that's not how they would ideally want to use him.
Yeah.
Speaking of the roster build, something that I want to ask specifically about is the left side of let's say the left wingback spot.
Yeah.
Because obviously Alvaro stepping out of it, it's a huge absence in the team. He was an incredibly influential player the last 2 seasons, mainly in that area. They bring in Luka, who hasn't played that position before, but by all accounts, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like by all accounts, he seemed game, to do it. And then his backup, they bring in Yamil Assad, who a veteran player, right? But kind of a similar profile where he's been more of a attacking left winger throughout his career, and how they've utilized him has been mainly, as a sub for Luka. And is there a specific strategy of like the left side is just all going to be Argentinian attackers forever, and then the right side of the defense is like where we go CONCACAF or
right? So it's funny because I think they're like in preseason, particularly, we saw a time where like that was a job that Brett Halsey was trying to go win, because that's a side of the field that I think he feels a little more natural on, is on the left as an attacker. And he adjusts to play on the right. I think that's kind of like how he wants to play. So I think that factors into it. And I think with Yamil, he's another guy who, like Yuya, like brings positional versatility. You can use him kind of where you're comfortable with, like, your mileage may vary on each individual position, but you feel comfortable with him in a lot of different places. And I thought he came on really early and played really well against St. Louis. I thought that was really interesting. But I think it's a situation where like he is a MLS veteran who kind of knows the deal. He knows how to play MLS. He knows how to play this style. And you can kind of put him anywhere on the field and go like, we need you to be defensive. We need you to be responsible. We can't have you make like brash mistakes or do things that are like, a more ambitious, creative player may encourage. Like I think Luke is a really exciting player because of his ability to take guys on one-on-one. Like he's going to do creative and crazy things on that wing that's going to get you out of press situations. But what Yamil Yamil might be assigned a little bit more to just like boot it downfield and kind of get out of danger. And I think that's where I'm curious to see, again, this is another thing, is like we haven't really seen him utilized at full health. So when the time comes, do they go with a Halsey for Luka sub when they need it? Because Halsey is, as we've kind of seen, I call him the step over king. He loves that move, and he's great. It works. Like he very clearly has no fear in terms of attacking that goal. But like that feels almost more of a like for like sub in terms of like we need a sub late who can bring offense versus a sub late who can provide defensive responsibility. So I mean, Yamil, I think like Luka, like as you mentioned, he came knowing what was going to be expected of him. I think something that was really interesting was like in his when he first arrived, his first couple press conferences, like he mentioned he watched a lot of these games last year. Like he watched the team because of Lucho, who is, growing as an influential figure in Argentina more and more, especially for young players who want to come to MLS as maybe a stepping stool, but also as like a premier professional league now. And so like he knew what Alvaro did for this team. And when they asked him to do that kind of thing, he'd watched it. He'd seen how he can be impactful. So his willingness, like, it was very funny in his first press conference. He was very adamant that he's not a defender. Like, he doesn't even like being called a midfielder. Like, he's a forward. He's an attacker. And you see that in his game. But I think his willingness to adjust kind of speaks to he came ready to do this. This is what his job was going to be, and he's okay with it.
So when he thought about replacing Barreal, was his thinking like, if I do really well, I could play in Brazil?
You don't have to answer that, Carter.
I mean, Brandon Vasquez is playing in Mexico right now, so I'll leave it at that.
Yakimakis is also apparently trying to get to Mexico. It seems we do have ProRel in MLS, and it's you promote yourself right on over to Mexico these days.
By the way, you may hear somebody in the fan base refer to a step over as a steck over. That's a bit of lore.
Mm-hmm.
There was a former club employee named Alex Steck who there was like some club video that went out or something.
They made a promotional video. It was a promotional video for a like club, like social media content creator, but they introduced her like as a player signing, and it had her doing a bunch of step overs, which we called steckovers. So if you can incorporate that, people will know you know.
Somewhere the FC Cincinnati director of communications is absolutely crying out laughing.
It might have been a few generations ago. The positional flexibility, though, with the players it feels to me unlike anything that we've seen before. I can't remember too many teams outside of, ones managed by Johan Cruyff, like truly preaching like this much flexibility. We saw a little bit with Jaap Stam to disastrous effect, but it really does feel like guys are being brought in to do a job from the jump that they maybe haven't done before. Like they're being identified as having a skill set that can be utilized in a particular place. I guess my question is, are there hidden talents on this roster that we're unaware of? Like, is Miles Robinson also training as a striker in case things go horribly sideways? Like, what else are we missing that hasn't been unveiled yet?
Does anybody do ventriloquism?
Yeah, right. How deep does this go?
God, I was trying to think of a good joke there, but like, well, Kelsey's actually training to be like the Bengals' new punter based on how things went on. I think, but like, this is all just like me having a take rather than like, I don't have conversations with Chris Albright in this way. Right. Like I meet with him when the press does. And like, that's the amount of information that I get in that sense. Is that like, I think if I had to ascribe an interesting point to it would be that like that's the way you build a roster in a salary cap league. Is like it's like that's Moneyball, right? Like that's the 2003 A's looking at like, hey, this guy doesn't maybe do the thing we want him to do. Like he does, but he does this other thing really well. And like that's the way you go get talent in a way that's like affordable or maybe undervalued. And I think you kind of see that up and down the roster. Like, hey, this guy, like, hey, like Obi coming over from, like Turkey is perhaps maybe not the most offensively driven player, but he's like one of the best players in the world in terms of like successful tackles, tracking second balls and picking up balls in the midfield. And like, that's part of the spine that's going to win the ball back to give to Lucho. Like that's the way things work. It's like Pavel in the same way, is that like, hey, Pavel may not be the most like dynamic this, that, or the other thing, but what he does really well is like carry the ball well through the midfield and progress passes from Miazga, Robinson, Murphy so that they can connect forward to Lucho. And I think we start to see how I think he's like either first or second in MLS right now in hockey assists. Yeah. Which is like a phrase that I used with Pat Noonan that he kind of didn't quite love with me recently, but like it's the phrase I knew how to use. or he gave me a funny look with during a press conference. But like you kind of start to see like, hey, what he's unbelievably quick on the ball. He lets balls go through him. He knows where other defenders are, and he can progress passes to the most important player in the league, which is Lucho Acosta. And like that's the way. And so like it extends even on to, like, I guess the one acquisition this year that's like, hey, that just makes too much sense is DeAndre, where it's like, if you can get him for just money, and this is a guy who is still one of the best wingbacks in the league, you go do that. But like with Luka, it's sure we might not have a forward position for you, and if you were a forward, you might command, in the open market a different rate. But we feel you can do this thing for us and be really successful in all the ways you still want to be, which is, attacking goal, scoring goals, getting assists, playing like pressing soccer. And to me, when I see the way they've built this roster, it's like, that's winning in salary cap leagues. Like that's finding value where other people don't find value. Kevin Kelsey on a loan on a U22 is like, we need this skill and like, this is how we can get it. So this is the value we get. That's to me how I see, like, they bring guys in and like Luka's the one real one where I think it's like a really interesting, like total change in position. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else in the roster that I'm like, but I can't think of another one like that, but it's like Yuya, like there's value because he like does everything. And there's, like Emil, like he does a little bit of everything. So you always have a guy who can do something. So that's the kind of roster build that I think is unique to him.
Yeah. I guess
the only other example I can think of is it's not as drastic as Luka, but from what I could tell with Pavel, before he came over, he was more of an attacking player.
Yeah.
Over there.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit, but he's still kind of, he's still playing like centrally in the midfield, right?
Yeah. It's moving a little bit back.
Yeah, I was going to say Obi spent some time playing a winger, I want to say, early in his career.
Yeah. In Hungary.
No, Carter, you brought it up actually perfectly. Unlocked some old memory of mine playing Madden on GameCube. You talk about like building this roster. This is how you have to build it for a salary cap. I don't know if Madden still does this. It's been years since I've played it, but there's this amusing glitch where you could create a player and you'd create a punter, but you'd put all of his skill points into the throwing. So he'd be the best possible quarterback, but when you signed him, because he was a creative player, is based on his skills that you distributed, he was a terrible punter, but you just promote him to the top of your quarterback depth chart. Yeah, that's what I'm imagining Chris Albright is doing when he's building this roster.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of funny though in that sense. It's like we need guys who do skills, and then we'll show them where to play.
Right.
Not like, hey, I desperately need a left wing back. Let's go buy a left wing back. Like, let's find a guy who does the things we want him to do, and then we'll figure it out, like where to put him out. We'll figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of this team getting youthful, I gotta stop myself because I've spent time as a U.S. men's national team fan, spending a lot of time getting hyped for very young youth products. But FC Cincinnati looks like they have one at time of recording. Looks like they got one in the academy. So I need to know. It's the question on everybody's mind. How do we pronounce Stefan's last name?
It's Chirila.
Chirila. Okay.
Yes. Stefan Chirila.
Stefan Chirila, not Chirila, which is what I think I was saying.
I would think I was saying Chirila, so I'm glad you asked that question.
I mean, like, Tom Bogert still calls Lucho Acosta, and I can't, it drives me nuts every time I hear it. So, like, there's a lot of different ways to say a lot of different names.
But, I mean, this kid has gone on to score every goal, it looks like, this calendar year that's been presented to him. He is finally awarded with what looks like a pre-homegrown contract.
He signed with the 2 team, and then
please explain what happened here.
So as I understand it, he has signed an MLS homegrown deal that is effective the first day of business for season 2025. Okay. So next season, which you can sign contracts for any number of days ahead of time. So like he has signed a MLS Next Pro contract for 2025, a deal only made possible because the FCC, I guess the right phrase is traded his rights from Philly when he came here as a academy prospect, which is I think a tiny bit of business to, have a 16-year-old come in and be like, yeah, we think he might be okay. And then it ends up being a lot cheaper than doing it on the back end. And so he has signed at this moment an MLS Next Pro contract with FC Cincinnati too. Okay. So he is on the Next Pro roster. He's a Next Pro player. If he was to play for the first team, it would be through the short-term loan system that we saw utilized a little bit last year. That's not to say that the deal can't be amended. Like nothing is impossible. He could play. He could, get called up for 4 games. Make a tremendous impact, kind of like a player like Brett Halsey did last year, and sign a first team deal, just, as a homegrown player. Will that happen? I think Pat's taken his time with him. He's been in training. He's 17 years old. Still not the youngest player on the first team, even starting next season. Right. I think he turns 18 later this year. So that'll be a little bit more, adult in some way. Right. But he's I had someone tell me earlier this week that it's like you put him 25 yards from goal and it's a guarantee, which is, I think, just kind of like an unbelievable thing to say about a 17-year-old. But like he keeps doing it, and he keeps doing it at every level against like every team. He does it against his old team in the GA Cup. He does it against Next Pro teams. He does it like he doesn't look. It's funny, like last year I said this about Dotto when he was training with the first team, was like, he's very definitively not an adult man in an adult man's game. Like he doesn't look the part quite yet. And then he came back after offseason and like did preseason. All of a sudden it was, whenever in Red Bulls, I was like, oh, that's an adult man. Like you're like, you belong out there, right? Like you belong as a player. Yeah. Like, whereas like Steven still has that like very like juvenile, like he's still physically not quite there yet, even though you can see he's technically and mentally very gifted. I think that's the same kind of thing with Stefan right now, is that like, you can see the talent. It's just like when you stick him next to, and he's like 6'1", so he's not like a little kid or anything, but like when you put him next to like Matt Miazga in training, it's like very definitive, like, hey, you've got some, like, he said it, and I wrote a story about it, I published it today at 5:00 as I was leaving the office. Got it out there just at the nick of time, where he's like, I have to still develop like technically, tactically, and physically. And he knows that that's what he has to do, but it's an exciting, he's a really exciting young player to watch. And he's like, it's worth the price of admission, which is free, to go to Scudamore Field at NKU to go watch him play every week. So it's exciting. He's an exciting player.
Do I have it right? He has scored something like 45 goals this year?
I'm pulling up
what is that?
I have the stat across all competitions here. 45 goals across all competitions, including the under 17s and MLS Next Pro.
I'll count everything. That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so we got our striker figured out for next year, so that's good. Okay, so we don't need to worry about anything else. That's good. Man, this is exciting because ultimately this is, and again, 17 years old. I'm still waiting for Gideon Zelalem to break in through Arsenal, right? Like, believe me, we've all been there. Yeah. But just the fact that we are even discussing this at 45 goals is not nothing here. Now, this is ultimately the promise of what Albright and Noonan coming in here from Philadelphia, what it was, which was, we're going to give you the Philadelphia model, but we'll have ownership that is actually willing to spend to support that. And we're literally, poaching kids from the Philly Academy and churning through DPs up top like nothing else. This is great. Like, this is exactly what we wanted to see with this team. And it's very exciting to see that it is playing out basically the way that we thought it would. I don't know if that's a deliberate decision. I don't know if they have that like motto somewhere in Albright's office, Philly but with money, but like it kind of looks like that.
I mean, the Philly Academy is well known, world renowned. They have whatever his name is, going to whatever club that is in Europe. I won't even mention their 115 point whatever they call it.
Yes.
But they're well respected around the league. They're well done,
Yeah.
and like the promise, like it's funny because like I thought of the academy as like a system that's like, listen, you're never gonna like, you're always gonna go get your three DPs. So like, you know, do what you can with your three DPs. And then if like they produce like a center back every once in a while, it's like, oh, great. Oh my God, it works. Cause like my familiarity with like academies as a whole is like completely, you know, fraudulent and juvenile in a certain way. Like I'm learning every day. Like, and so like all of a sudden, like, you know, Larry Sunderland and Cristiano Scapolo like see a 16-year-old who's like a offensive midfielder for Philly, and they're like, I got an idea, and he scores 45 goals. Like, oh my God, okay, like, all right, let's go, like, let's do this. That's kind of wild. Like, they're just like, oh yeah, like I kind of like joked with someone this afternoon. I was like, I wonder how that conversation went. It's like, yeah, we'll take your, you know, he's a fledgling 6, like whatever. It's fine. Like 18 months later, he's your second youngest homegrown signee ever.
Now, my understanding is there is another Chirila.
Andre.
Any, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about this? You can't split them up, right?
I would say, if I had to guess, if I came to school one day and someone stole my lunch money, I wouldn't keep my lunch money in the same pocket the next day. So if it's Philly but with money, the guy who keeps knocking on my door asking for my 16-year-old midfielders, I'd stop letting him take them. But like I gotta know, it's such a funny world of like, he's 15, I think, his younger brother.
Mm-hmm.
So like he's very talented, as I understand it. Like I've never seen him play. I've never, you know, watched tape on him, but everything I've heard about the younger Chirila brother is that he's also very talented. And maybe something happens, but you know, maybe it doesn't. I really don't know. I'd imagine that like you'd want to have your family nearby you. I'd imagine that's something everyone would want. Whether that's a thing, like he belongs to the Philadelphia Union Academy, and until he doesn't, he does.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was another one too, where it was clearly they identified his skill set as you said, like he was a midfielder, defensive midfielder, and they decided this is the dream striker prospect we've been looking for. It's so good.
Like I'm curly-haired Romanian kid
is exactly the missing piece.
Yeah.
So we're looking ahead now. This weekend, the team goes back to Toronto. They faced them earlier this year. I think it's fair to say this is a different looking Toronto team than the one, or different vibes around the club at the very least than what they faced early on this year. I don't know. You're the resident Canadian here.
Yeah.
What should we expect in Toronto?
I really like John Herdman. Yeah. I know that might not be like a universally accepted take. It's the same reason why I'm like skeptical of Jesse Marsh as the Canadian national team coach. Is like just the idea of an American as like the Canadian national team head coach is like, you got to prove it to me first, buddy. But like John like very clearly showed like what he can do with top level players while coaching the Canadian national team. Like we're talking about like he coached Alphonso Davies and like player and Jonathan David of players like that. So like it's maybe the least surprising thing that like he's gotten the two Italians in Bernardeschi and Insigne to like really buy in, which is what they were missing last year. Like you'd watch those teams and they were just so checked out. Like they just didn't want to be there. They didn't want to play. And so like now they're pretty great. And like fifth place, like it's been up and down. Like they're not like the most consistent team, but they have like very clear high-end talent. And then I don't think Bernardeschi can't play this weekend. He's on yellow card suspension, which is a bit of fortune for FC Cincinnati. That's kind of nice. But like it's a team with a lot more talent. They kind of brought in talent, a coach who is known for being flexible tactically, right? Like that's kind of how he got through the CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers, was like, we're going to do whatever they're not good at. Like, we're going to look at the American team and we're going to match them. We're going to look at the Mexican team. We're going to match them. We're going to Costa Rica, Pan, whatever. So like, I wasn't surprised this year when that game went 0-0 to open the season. It kind of felt like new head coach, really positive vibes for the last place team. Maybe he's re-energized and brought in a new idea. FCC didn't look quite right in Jamaica against Cavalier, but it's the first game with 6 new starters. Like, what can you expect? I'm expecting a very different game, even without Bernadeschi. I think Toronto is like very clearly offensively gifted in the way they're able to, like, I guess, strike the ball is the way I want it. Like, they're not afraid to put shots on target, and like the FCC defense is obviously really good at mitigating shots. Like, that's probably what they're best at, is just like not allowing you to get shots on net. And then Roman is there to kind of clean up the dirty work if there's if some things do get through. But I would expect Roman to be tested this weekend, and you know, like, it's going to be on whatever combination of forwards to score a couple of goals to win in Toronto again. That's kind of how I see this game going.
Yeah.
I got to ask.
Yeah.
The last time, I mean, you kind of alluded to it earlier. The last time you were in Toronto was fairly momentous.
It was.
You know, you have any words you want to share about your experience?
Like, after the podcast, I'll have more. It was one of the, like, it's one of those things that, like, you kind of dream of as a kid being involved in, is like in the locker room. Like, I think the best story I have from that, which it's my story, so like I have no problem sharing it, is that, like, we got into the locker room, our comms and content team came, like, ready for this kind of thing with, like, I had, like, science goggles and, like, rain ponchos and stuff like that, like, because we knew, like, we're going to be carrying, like, some of our photographers and videographers were carrying, like, $60,000 worth of technical equipment that, like, Ryan Geist wasn't going to, like, reimburse us for when their beer gets, like, spilled all over it. But then, like, the first thing that, like, I'm getting in there looking to, like, take video, like, help take videos, and, like, Yerson, Aaron, and Marco Angulo, like, hand me their phones and they're like, Instagram live. And I'm like, okay, like, that's just my job now. Like I guess that's my job. So I'm, like, holding 3 phones, just, like, walking around the room, making sure to get them. And like, so a lot of the content comes from just, like, me being like, I'll hold whatever phone you want me to. Like, that's my job now. So, and then the trip back was obviously, it was a pretty magical night, like, seeing everyone at CVG and, like, mobbing, because, like, I don't know what I expected when we arrived. I was like, it's pretty late, we're probably going to go home. And then, as I understand it, like, people were being told, like, the players were not going to want, like, let them go home, they might celebrate. And I think if you had been on the bus, that instruction would have never been given. Like, I think they were pretty excited to, like, if they had seen, like, what was going on the buses, like, they'd have been like, no, they're gonna go out there and celebrate. Like, this is a big moment. So it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool night. It was a really cool time to be, you know, came in at the right time. I'll say that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I joked with our comm staff, though, because, like, we've had people who were here since 2020, and, like, their first day or so in office was, like, firing, like, a coach getting let go. I was like, this championship's for you. I came here 6 months ago. Like, this is for you. Like, I'm enjoying myself, but, like, you should be the one having fun. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I was there. I was lucky enough to be there at the airport for the celebration. And yeah, you were exactly right. They gave us that instruction that the players are tired. They want to go home. We're not allowed to get in their way. They also asked us to, like, not make a lot of noise, which was really funny. And yeah, within seconds of the bus stopping, the bus might not have even fully stopped, Hagland sprints off the bus and literally dives into the crowd. Yeah, it was an incredible moment. This team, I mean, is still, as we said, like, there's 5 or 6 starters, depending on how you want to slice it, new to this team. But there's still a lot of carryover. Do you get the sense that there is any seeking of revenge or a job left undone from some of the guys that were there? Or do they look back and see Supporter Shield in the rest of the world, job well done, we did it?
It's probably somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not one or the other. Like, I think everyone in the organization is extremely proud of how last year went. And I think they're also very aware of like how last year ended and like why it ended. And I think that kind of alludes to like, injury, suspension, like all the things I mentioned earlier. Like,
yeah,
this is a leadership group is what I'll call it. Like Pat, the coaches down to like Lucho, Matt, Nick, like Alec Khan has a big, Alec Can, excuse me. Alec Can.
Kevin has never gotten it right. Don't worry.
They're all deeply a part of the leadership group and like setting of the tone for the group as a whole. And like, there's not anything they don't want to win. Like there isn't anything like they lost Leagues Cup last year and that was devastating. Like there is not a like Open Cup, Leagues Cup. If they hadn't won Supporters Shield, if they haven't won, like they didn't win MLS Cup, like there's nothing they don't want to win. So like when there's conversation around the team that's like, oh, they're gonna like punt on a game or they're gonna like do this or not take Leagues Cup seriously. It's like that's not how they do things. They're not like I couldn't even explain as to like to them the idea of not wanting to win everything. So I think they do see a job unfinished with MLS Cup this year, but they also just want to win everything. Like so, like they're very proud of everything. So.
It feels like a good mentality you'd want from your hometown team to want to go in and win everything and not pick and choose what they're actually going to try for. I mean, we've been talking for a while. Chief, I was curious, do you have any questions or are you just happy to sit back and listen to all this?
I'm just happy to sit back and listen to all this. Hi, Carter.
Hey, Chief.
Thanks for joining.
Of course. Anytime.
Oh, good stuff. This is perfect timing for you, Chief, because I'm out of questions. I don't know. Carter, did you come to us hoping to talk about something that we didn't ask the right question for?
No, I'm trying to think of anything else I can give a take on. I don't know if I have any more. I might be out of takes here.
You don't belong here then.
No, I mean, I'll find one here.
Favorite piece of Star Wars media?
Ooh, hold on.
Oh, we're going to a shelf. This is great. Hey,
we got a little Grogu here. I got a Kylo Ren up there. The answer is the original trilogy, and then Clone Wars, the animated show. Not like like both are great. The second in the lineage of one is Clone Wars and one is the Clone Wars, and I'll go with the Clone Wars. I love that. But and then I think probably Andor and Rogue One.
That's some well-earned nerd cred, knowing that there are two different animated Clone War TV shows.
There's very little. I mean, I'd show you I got a little bit of everything over here on my wall, but the Spider-Man world is probably the one I got the most of. So that's where I'll take my nerddom there. But I got a little bit of everything. I got some game in terms of the nerd world like that.
On a scale of 10 to 11, how mad are you that Mara Jade has been erased from the canon?
See, like it's gonna come. She's gonna come back,
right?
Like they're just like it's just if you give Dave Filoni enough time, like everything that's old will be new again. Like it's like they're like, oh, like just bring it all. Like I really never expected them to be like, yeah, Rebels is the show we're gonna turn into like a live action Ahsoka, and it's like, yeah, no, we're doing that. Like we're taking Rebel, like it'll all happen eventually.
You're just gonna use the same voice for Thrawn as his live action, even though he looks kind of like Elon Musk. Yeah, sure, why not? The hell, this will be fine.
It'll work. It'll work out just fine.
See, this is why I joined the Zoom for these few moments right here.
Well, it was like I thought they were going to for sure go with like Ashley Eckstein to be the live action Ahsoka, and I met her in St. Louis a handful of times.
Wow.
Because Eckstein is as in David Eckstein, the old shortstop for the Cardinals.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yes.
She's David Eckstein?
Yes.
Wait, what's her relation to David Eckstein?
They're married.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And-
I was happier
Sorry,
not knowing
Grayson.
that.
yeah. And so like she'd come out and throw first pitches for like every Star Wars night or every like thing in St. Louis was like, voice of Ahsoka Tano, and like they do the whole thing. So it was like, I was like, I really wanted her to be the live action Ahsoka, and then I was like, oh, you're like 5 or like 4'6", like you're not going to be like, camera won't capture you. Like, so,
I'm brain bottled right now
Yeah.
by learning that fact right now.
yeah,
Wow.
got you in a mental pretzel. Here we go.
Seriously.
for a very, very specific Cincinnati-based fan, I think.
I
this is-
hate David Eckstein so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Ages everything.
Oh God. Oh, hey, on that note, Carter, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a
Anytime.
blast. I like to think that we learned something. Chief certainly learned something. So
I need some time to process.
Yeah.
I was on this interview for 4 minutes and I need time to process.
That's what I do. Bring the knowledge, bring the heat.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, yeah, thank you. And I'll throw in the show notes the story you wrote of Stefan Chirila, so we can make sure we got him covered. So awesome, man. Thank you so much. And we are back, and again, a huge thank you to Carter for coming on the podcast. I'm so happy that we were able to perform our ritual to make him a Cincinnati citizen. That was very important for him.
I missed that.
You did. It was fun. But yeah, no, he's one of ours.
Did he pick a high school?
Ooh.
No.
Well, but we did discuss after the pod, I can think of 2 he might pick. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see which school district he ends up landing in.
Yeah. Kevin, it's late. And nobody
It
listens
is.
to these podcasts for the previews that we do.
No.
Let's keep this short. Because I don't know dick about Toronto.
I don't think Toronto knows much about Toronto. They are a different team than what we saw earlier this year. All I know is their best player is Bernadeschi, and he is not available. So he got too many red cards. Maybe the most interesting thing for this matchup is the referee.
Yes.
So
Oh,
I
no.
want to focus on this. Victor Rivas is the center referee, as many of you will know. And if you don't, God bless you. He was the center referee that ultimately gave Matt Miazga his second yellow card in the penalty shootout at Red Bull in the playoffs last year, when Matt Miazga, showed heart hands to his hometown club and his original club. He received that yellow card. That was enough to suspend him due to yellow card accumulation in the playoffs, suspended him for the subsequent matches. He allegedly went to the referee locker room after the fact, where there was an incident where he, again, allegedly entered the referee's locker room, and that got him suspended for 3 games. That was eventually walked back to 2. However, between the yellow card and the league suspension, which wasn't allowed to overlap, which I thought was weird, he missed the rest of the playoffs. And between injuries and everything else, it essentially helped be a part of one of the many factors that sank FC Cincinnati's playoff hopes last year. Grayson called it at the time, and I think it's very fair in retrospect to point out that this incident played very nicely into the hands of the referee union as they began their negotiations for a new contract, in highlighting player-referee struggles in the league and how the league needed to do them a solid given their rough working conditions, a la Matt Miazga entering the locker room in a threatening manner. It does seem to me, let's say that everything happened as described by the referees union, which, according to people who were there, I don't think Matt has ever said anything himself, although he's probably pleaded his ignorance or his innocence. But certainly according to Noonan and Albright, that it was an exaggeration, but let's take it at face value. If that is indeed what happened, I think this is too soon to put Rivas on an FC Cincinnati game. Yeah?
100%. 100%. And I don't have a look. Our demand for demand. You know, if anybody's fucking listening to us.
Manifesto, if you will.
My belief is that I will complain every time Rivas gets assigned one of our games until we get a full accounting of what happened. And I don't mean I mean who was involved in putting out the PSRA tweet?
Yes.
You know, what went into that process? Because it seems to me like that still strikes me as wholly inappropriate when there's a disciplinary process
that was ongoing.
Ongoing under the MLS CBA, which the refs under their CBA have a duty to, you know, assist with.
Yeah.
So people are like giving testimony and stuff and whatever else is going on. And then suddenly like they blow up the confidentiality of this whole thing.
Yep.
Right. And there's no reason to me that you would do that unless you wanted to influence the outcome. And a desire to influence, like referees aren't supposed to be influencing they're not supposed to be influencing like the opinions of the outcome, right? You're only supposed to influence the outcome in like the shitty calls you make.
It should not matter to you if a player is available in the next game or not. It doesn't matter to the referee.
So the PSRA goes out and they say, we're gonna end their playoff run, essentially, right? Yeah. And you know, Rivas really screwed up that game. We have no idea to this day what role he might have played in like authorizing that tweet. The assistant VAR, Jonathan Johnson, is a member of the PSRA's executive board. He may have been part of the process of issuing that tweet. We don't know.
Yep.
And I think that we're entitled to know. Like, I think some transparency on this would be very helpful. So like, I want to know like what went into that tweet. What did Miazga actually do? Yeah. What facts did MLS hear from the various participants about what happened? Who did they believe? What after hearing all of the testimony and reviewing whatever tape is out there, if MLS was to draft up a narrative of what they think happened that night,
we lost.
It's
Grayson.
annoying.
What would that look like?
No.
So like, I think that we need to get all of those things before Victor Rivas gets to ref an FC Cincinnati game again, because there's a whole bunch of just like fucked up process here that I think needs to be cleared up. And I think it's disrespectful, right? I think it's a statement that we are not entitled to know anything about why we lost our, you know, defensive player of the year for what would have been the rest of the MLS Cup playoffs. Had we advanced past crew, right? Like, you know, we were excited at potentially winning MLS Cup, and that was taken from us, and we know shockingly little about it. And that's a problem, I think.
It's very weird that the league never came out with a like report laying everything out. The closest we got was them outlining Miazga's punishment. Like there was never a conversation of like what appeals were made and not made, or let FC Cincinnati explain, because there was reporting out that FC Cincinnati did not appeal the yellow card or whatever. Very, very strange situation. And yeah, with the labor dispute and everything, it feels like some of it would necessarily need to be made public somewhere.
Well, how about this? If you're not going to make it public, there's a million MLS games this guy can ref.
Yes.
Put him someplace else.
Yep.
Just put them someplace else. Just you and FC Cincinnati need some time away from one another, and you damn sure need some time away from games Matt Miazga is playing. Sorry, like either we get full transparency or you've lost your FCC privileges. I don't think that's an unreasonable ask at this point.
No, there was a list recently because it was Nottingham Forest, I think, was sent out a statement that they had a referee decision go against their way, and they alleged that the VAR was a fan of a rival team that somehow would have benefited from his decision there. But there was a list made of all of the referees working in the Premier League and their fan allegiances, and then therefore the teams, including the team that they're a fan of and the various rivalries, that they're just not allowed to be on. And I very much enjoy that transparency. And I don't know if that was a leak or if that's a thing that they actually put out, but like, I really enjoy the fact that like known biases are out there and you just don't put them on those games. This feels like a pretty obvious situation where it might not be great. And let's say Rivas has completely moved on and they interviewed him and he's totally cool. Is Miazga? Is FC Cincinnati? Is Noonan? Like, are they cool with that? Did they all have to sign off on this? Like, it just leaves way too much open to let this happen.
Because if you're Matt Miazga, do you really want to have a conversation with any of these officials in this game?
Ugh.
Do you want to say anything? Or are you going to be worried that the first time you open your mouth, you're going to get a card and you're going to be officiated differently? It changes everything, and it's annoying.
Well, here's the other thing, right? Like, from what we know from what the PSRA put out, this was a violent, traumatizing experience.
Yeah.
For the referees. Is it responsible to put Rivas in a position where he might experience, some like PTSD?
Right. What if he freezes?
What if Miazga walks out into the field and he immediately like faints?
That'd be hilarious.
I assume based on the consequences that it was like a violent, crazy kind of event.
Flash the hard hands. I'm here for you, babe.
I'm very interested to see when, how, and by whom heart hands are deployed.
No,
in this game.
it's a thing now, right? Like the team isn't acknowledging this.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot of hard hands getting thrown up on this team. Like Kelsey dropped the hard hands. I think Santos dropped the hard hands. I think it's a conscious thing now. I think it's a thing. Capital T. And what's going to happen when our young friend Kevin Kelsey scores again and he drops the hard hands? What are those refs going to do? What's going to happen?
Straight to jail.
Believe it or not, jail.
Yeah, like imagine if you in your workplace you get in an almost fight because nobody ever said anybody hit anybody, but like you had a violent confrontation with somebody at work. Surely your managers or whoever would be working to make sure you two didn't interact if you were for both some reason unable to be fired for doing this.
Unless your workplace is the World Wrestling Federation, in which case
or NASCAR, apparently.
It's hell in a cell. We're settling this once and for all.
Oh, man. We need something at the All-Star game of a refs versus players event would be really funny.
It would be really funny if Miazga just came out and just clocked him with a steel chair. That would just... No notes.
I did see the note that, not to follow up your no notes with a note, but somebody pointed out or mentioned that Lucha should give up the armband to Miazga for just this game so that he has to shake hands with the referees at the beginning of the game. And, he's the one that the ref is supposed to go to.
He comes over and just points to the arm and does one of these. Gives him the old stone cold salute.
So my prediction for this game is if you can get access to a incredibly shady Southeast Asian betting website hammer the Matt Miazga red card, Matt Miazga first half yellow card lines, because whatever those are, you're making money.
I'm into it.
Should we predict this game and get out of here?
Let's do it. Grayson, what do you got for us?
Remember, we're doing the new preview system. I need a score and who's the striker pairing.
Okay, so the striker pairing is Kelsey and Dotto.
Okay.
And the final score is 1-0 Toronto.
Oh.
They're gonna stick it to us.
And it's a penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we get at least one called back. If not
so
more.
Good. That'd be so good. I can't wait to hate watch this game. Chief, what do you got?
I got 2-1 to the FC. My striker pairing is Kelsey and Kubo. And they both score with a cost of getting assists on both of them.
I am going to go 0-0 draw, because I feel like that'll be the most annoying. And my striker pairing is Kelsey Santos. I think Santos has earned himself a road start. Why not?
It's got
There you go.
written all over it.
There you go. Well, we will be back after the Toronto match to discuss the inevitable
Win.
screw job. Yeah.
No, everyone, to keep the pro wrestling going, everybody
Yeah.
knows the screw jobs happen in Montreal. This is a
That's
known
true.
fact.
Or they happen in Canada. However you want to interpret this.
No. No. The hitman was screwed in Montreal. Never forget. Brett screwed Brett. Are we done with this?
Kill it.
Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. Also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.